A force field brought them together, and they've been friends ever since. Here's a look at the McFarlane toys, DC Multiverse, Blue Beetle, and Booster Gold. Booster Gold was a college football star of the 25th century who earned the nickname Booster on the field. Even though people assured him of a professional career of fame and fortune was in his future, he decided he couldn't wait and wagered on his own games. The scandal ruined his dreams and reputation. Taking a job as a security guard at the Metropolis Space Museum, Mike saw another opportunity after studying the early age of superheroes. With future and an alien technology stolen from the museum and a time machine that was on display, he realized he could not only become a superhero himself in the past era where criminal history was unknown, but he could also make his good deeds profitable. Before we look at Booster, before we look at Blue, the first thing I'd like to do is thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of Blue Beetle and Booster Gold that we could have a look at in this video. Grabbing first the tape measure just to see how tall the figures stand, we're going to start first with Booster Gold. Booster Gold, right to the very top of his golden locks, stands about 6.5 inches in height, or the figure's about 16.5 centimeters tall. Then on to Blue Beetle, though. Blue Beetle is about the same size. You could even in fact say he's just slightly bit taller. The figure's about 6 3/4 of an inch tall, or about 16.5 centimeters in height. Then what seems to have become the norm around here, for a size comparison, let's bring in the DC Rebirth Batman. Not only just because I've been recently using Batman a lot for my size comparisons, but also because as well, Batman's about the same. It's about the same size in the shoulders as both the figures we're about to have a look at, though his cowl or his head seems slightly smaller than the two we're about to have a look at. Despite being a two-pack, both the figures of Booster Gold and Blue Beetle come included with their own corresponding trading card. One thing I do like right away about the trading card is, as you can see, with now both examples in front of you, they're actually using artwork and not figure photography. I really like this one with Booster Gold, as you can see the reflection of the Boy Wonder Robin and the Cape Crusader Batman on his gauntlets. Really cool looking artwork. Blue Beetle, on the other hand, as you can see, is coming down from the top of his ship. Classic looking of Blue Beetle. One thing very apparent this one is the fact that it does have the translucent eyes, which unfortunately is the one thing I wish this figure could have actually had. Translucent eyes. I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. On the back, a substantial readout. Just for the amount of time it would have taken to actually read both of them, I only decided to read Booster Gold's information, but if you certainly would like to pause the video, you can certainly read both for yourself instead. I'm going to put those to the side. Both the figures as well, even though they come included with a diorama display stand, still managed to pull off getting a basic display stand with the DC logo branded down below. Singular pegs, as very apparent on the top corners there, they'll just simply plug into the feet of either one of those figures. Or again, you also have the option as well of using the diorama display base. The base itself, as we've seen with times before with two packs, generally is just the floor. You don't get the back or anything along those lines, but I do like the way they've molded this. It's very futuristic. Maybe I don't know necessarily if I would have said, I don't know if I would have actually displayed it with Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, but the only problem with that, though, is the next accessory we're about to have a look at actually does require this display stand. If anybody want to guess what that is. Somebody right now is yelling in the back. Sir, you don't have to yell so loudly. Skeets. Yes, skeets. There is a hole here. Actually, first of all, there's a couple of pegs right here that will attach to the feet. I guess if you want to keep the skeets, you'll probably have Booster Gold on this side and then have Blue Beetle on the other. But there's a hole right here that the figures come also included with skeets. Skeets himself is nicely detailed. As you can see, the drone itself is all done here in a gold plastic. It actually looks like it was likely painted in gold, with the visor here on the front done in blue. Tiny little eyes. I'm guessing those to be eyes on the front of Skeet. There is some articulation, so yeah, you can rotate Skeet around if you want to. But he has this long post here. It's not very something that you can easily hide, but there's a peg on the end of it, and then that just attaches onto the display stand. Just slots in place. Now, I can already tell you one thing. One issue I have with this, probably already know where I'm going to be going with this, is that once you then take your figures, and then for all intents and purposes, let's just slide this back. We're just going to makeshift this right now. If I was to put Booster Gold and I was to put Blue Beetle on the display stand, hoping, of course, they're both going to stand. Blue Beetle actually is the harder of the two figures to stand, but let's just hold them for right now. This is in line where the figures are going to be standing, but then Skeets is way down there, way down there. I wish that they actually could have made the post a little bit longer to maybe where Skeets would have been sitting at around the shoulder area of Booster Gold. Or what they could also have done as well, as they've done before with the DC Universe figures. I'm just going to slide the display stand out of the way here. Take both the figures and get them back standing here. One thing I wish that they could have also done as well, you know what, we'll just lay them down on the job, is that if they had found a way to take Skeets, put a little hole on the back of his body. Oh, you see where I'm going with this. Put a little hole on the back of the body. Then you could have actually attached Skeets to the shoulder of Booster Gold. And then Booster Gold could simply just be able to talk to him at eye level instead of looking down onto the display base, where Skeets, unfortunately, has been relegated to. I like Skeets. I don't think there's a way even to detach him. There probably is, to detach him from the post here. But I wish there was actually a way that they could have had a hole on the back of his body where you could have attached Skeets onto the shoulder. They've done that before with the DC Universe figures. I wish they could have done this as well with the DC Multiverse figure. Putting that to the side, the figure also comes included with his bracelet. Bracelet, as you can see here, is more of a softer plastic, so it's very easy to actually fit over top of his wrist, his existing wrist. And he's got himself like a little blast effect, a little firing effect. I think that's a nice touch. Not something I'm likely going to be displaying with Booster Gold, but again, I always appreciate when companies like McFarlane Toys slip in there accessories like this. Put that to the side. The last thing, here we go. The last thing the figure comes included with as well is his cell phone. Good for taking selfies. It's a very similar type of color, although it's a little bit more darker of a yellow than the rest of his body. Here's where I have the problem with this. It doesn't really fit in his hand very well at all. The way they've sculpted the hand, obviously you're not going to be able to use this hand. This hand's just good for punching people, but this hand right here is obviously the relaxed hand for holding the phone. The phone as it is right now, you would say for all intents and purposes would sit against the thumb, right? It would just sit like that. Unfortunately though, the fingers don't wrap around enough of it to hold it in place. One thing I ended up doing though, you can use this as an example if you want to, is leave a gap in between the pinky and the last finger. And then from there, I guess that would be the ring finger. From there, you can actually take the phone. Still not easy, but you can have the phone sort of resting in between the thumb and the pinky finger. I did it earlier at the beginning of this review. Watch now that everybody's watching me. I'm so shy. But watch now that everybody's watching me. I can't pull it off. It fits though in that area, but like I said, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit very well. I'm just going to leave it to the side because I really do not want to lose it. I really think with a case like a phone like this, they probably should have just included a secondary hand because this isn't going to be stored anywhere on the figure. It's only going to go in his hand anyways. If they had only included another hand like this that had the phone permanently attached to it, that's a lot better. I don't want to use the G word, but maybe glue would be in the foreseeable future of Booster Gold. I might just glue the phone into his hand. I don't know. I mean, it looks good, obviously, for the showcasing of the figure. I mean, obviously, as well, with his hand being like this, it could just be a relaxed hand. It doesn't have to commit to the idea of him holding a phone. But I do wish that they could have actually found a way to actually have the phone sit better in his hand. I would hate to have lose the phone at all. Actually, one other thing, too. We'll go back to looking at the figures here in a moment. Again, Booster Gold leans a little bit more further forward. Blue Beetle technically does come included with his own accessory as well, as he does come included with the Beetle gun. Blue Beetle gun just attaches into his hand. It's essentially a harpoon or cable gun, similar to Batman's grapple gun. As you can see, it fires off a tiny little beetle of a similar gold, as of course you can see for the rest of the line here. The actual gun itself is nicely painted here in a silver. I do like the contrast between the gold and the silver. I don't know why I'm waving my hand in front of it or behind it. This obviously can only fit into his hand this side, the same way that the phone only attaches to this side of Booster Gold's body. So they're best friends. At least they always like to have the accessories on the same side of their bodies. Go ahead and take that and put that to the side. You know what? Let's look at, while we've got him here anyways, let's get a closer look at Blue Beetle. You know, overall, I like the head sculpt. I like the big smile that they put on his face. He seems a little on the more tan side, right around the top or bridge of his nose, on the sides of his cheeks as well. I don't know why he's redder there than he isn't for the rest of his face. But it's a nicely sculpted face, except for one thing. I do wish that the figure could have actually had, well, let's just bring back in the card for the example here. I do wish that they could have given him clear lenses on his goggles. Clear translucent plastic, so you could still have seen his eyes underneath. It wouldn't have made much of a difference that you wouldn't be able to make out the eyes. Even if the eyes look blurry, I would have still rather that than actually them painting the goggles, or in this case, the eyes all yellow like this. It's okay, but I think it loses the effect of Blue Beetle's costume, because whenever I think of Blue Beetle, I always think of him with the see-through goggles. Other than that, though, I like the head sculpt quite a lot. Nice panel lining that they've done the area around the eyes, and there's some additional panel lining down the side of his mouth as well. The head, I find, looks a little darker here in the plastic than they did for the rest of the torso. Maybe they likely molded this in this color, whereas they actually would have painted this in the blue. It's pretty close, but it seems just one shade darker than the rest of his body. Paneling is nicely handled here as well. You've got the bottom section of the Beetle. You can see the antenna, the legs there, sculpted in as part of his classic-looking suit. The goggles is really the only thing I don't like about this figure. Well, I don't want to say don't like. It's the only thing I wish the figure could have actually done differently. The rest of the costume looks really fantastic. The lighter blue works quite well with the darker blue that they use. The panel lining is very clean and well applied. The little belt buckle there that he has, also again nicely painted. Other than that, it's really just the goggles for me. Not a deal breaker at all, because I'm just finally glad to get a classic looking Blue Beetle. It's been a long time coming. One thing I also did want to mention about this figure, and I did happen to notice it here also in Booster Gold, is that they have a joint. Well, obviously both the legs are on joints, but you see there's a little gap space right here. It's not on this side of the figure's body. It's only here, and you can see, I feel like I can push it up a little further, but it doesn't look like it actually goes any further than what it is. Maybe I may have to heat that up. But what's rather interesting, though, is that Booster Gold has it in the same spot. It looks like they probably would have used the same, they would have used the same legs, because, of course, the sculpting of the top band of the boot is still there in Booster Gold, whether it's painted or not. For some reason, it's just that gap space right there. If you do own these figures, let me know down below in the comment section if you have a similar gap, only on this side of the body. Again, it's only on this side of the body. Really strange. Putting back down Booster Gold, we'll get back to you in a moment, sir. For the articulation here on Blue Beetle, head rotates all the way around. It's on a ball joint. Head looks down. Pretty good, actually, in fact. Head looks up. Quite well as well. You can also rotate the head or hinge the head back and forth. Shoulders, I know, we've already looked at the articulation many times over when it comes to these figures. Pretty much you're going to be getting the same thing happening here with Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. Shoulders come up, or shoulders allow the arms to get a 90-degree angle bend. You take the arms and rotate them all the way around. He has a bicep swivel. Figure has also a double hinge on the elbow, and the hands rotate all the way around. No hands also has swappable options here for Booster Gold or Blue Beetle. What you get is what you get. Upper torso is on a ball joint, and then behind the trunks he actually has a secondary ball joint. The trunks, by the way, are softer plastic, and that's the same as well for Booster Gold. Legs are on ratcheted joints, but again, like you can see how this part of the leg shifts further down here in the joint. It's closer in quarters when it comes to this one. Not really sure why that's the case. Legs go forward, right? Legs go back, yeah. Swivel at the top of the thigh, double hinge on the knee. No articulation in the boot. The boot's just a continuation of the sculpting for the lower leg. But he does have at least ankle pivot, ankle rocker, and the figure has as well toe articulation. Like the look of Blue Beetle. Again, like classic look down. They've got it. They've got it perfect. The only thing, again, I probably would have done differently for Blue Beetle is just make the goggles see-through. Maybe we might get ourselves a gold edition Blue Beetle. I don't know. Time will tell. But if we do, I hope it includes clear goggles, because that's the only thing I would have liked to see differently done here on the figure. On to then Booster Gold. I like the look of Booster Gold. First of all, I like that he has a big smile on his face. No better of a sculpt or no better of an expression I would have picked for Booster Gold than an arrogant smile across his face. He still has, strangely, this kind of darker tan around the bridge of his nose. I mean, again, when you look at Blue Beetle, he has it in the same space, on his cheeks and the top of his nose. These guys must be shy. Like the smile, I like the goggles that they've given him. I don't think this is a case where I would have needed to have clear goggles or see-through goggles. The solid goggles work perfectly fine for Booster Gold. Big, long, golden locks, I should say. And I even like the way they've sculpted around the area of where the ear normally would have been on the cowl piece. Now, for Booster Gold, you can kind of see some departures when it comes to the shading of the yellow. The lower legs seem to be molded in yellow plastic. This part right here looks like it was likely darker blue plastic, and then they painted over, and the same thing could be applied for the top of his torso and the sides of his arms as well. The yellow does differ in some of the places. Again, like the brightest yellow seems to be in the legs. It's a little bit more muted here. It's pretty close, not too much offsetting to the point where it's like, again, a deal breaker for this figure. It looks really good, but you very obviously can notice that the yellow isn't quite the same shade as the yellow that we get down below. And there's Blue Beetles, or there's Booster Golds behind. Again, nice looking figure. He does have the ring there on the one side of his hand. Of course, he does have the little raised squares of yellow, which again aren't quite the same yellow that he has for the forearms, nor for the shoulders, nor for the torso. But the lower legs again kind of have a more closer color of yellow. Articulation on this guy is again the same as Blue Beetle, so we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. But again, like you got your head, you got your shoulders, yada yada yada. Rotation in the arms, yeah, you know it by now. You know it by now. Double hinge on the elbows, hands. Upper torso, lower torso. And again, still strange that there's that gap space from the top of his thigh. Well, just below the trunks, there's just that one space there. It's not on this side. It only happens to be on that one side there. But again, you got the softer skirting, the lower, softer plastic that they use for the trunks. Swivel on the legs, double hinge on the knee. And again, the same articulation in the feet, ankle, rocker, and toe articulation as well. If you are a fan of the classic look of both Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, this is a must-have pickup set. And I do like the idea as well that we got ourselves the set packed as two. I mean, they're good friends after all in the comics. You'd like to think as well that they could have been packaged together as best buddies, and they are. The only thing, again, about the set, overall I like the figures. And you know what? I'm just going to get myself a display stand. I don't want to be talking away, and sure enough, Booster Gold falls over on me. Let's get Booster Gold on a display stand. You know, again, the only thing I would say I've done differently, what I would have done differently, is just made the goggles more translucent on Blue Beetle. And then again, when it comes to the display stand, I'm going to just bring it in right now. The idea of having Skeets so small and so low down below on the display stand like this, I wish they could have made it just a little bit longer. Because again, like when you put it next to the other two figures, poor Skeet almost gets overlooked. He's way down there. Skeets needs to be up here, shoulder height. At the very least, they probably could have had a way to peg it onto the back of Booster Gold's body, so Skeets was always nearby. One thing I will say, though, about McFarlane and the rest of his team over at McFarlane Toys is that they are listening to their fans. While it's always nice that we get ourselves the miniseries tied-in characters that only appear in 4 or 5 issues and a Batman that many of us as casual collectors may not even recognize right away, we always wanted to get ourselves classic characters, though, and it seemed to start right away with what we got with Classic Bane. Now we get ourselves a 2-pack of Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, and it looks, while the costumes have stayed somewhat similar over the years, it still has a very classic look of both Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. Accessories that the figures come included with, and first of all, again, I want to just go back to the idea that the fact that they were packaged together, yes, it does mean that the set's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it means right away that you can get 2 really good figures without having to buy them separately. Skeets, again, you could technically consider him a character, but for how small and how low he sits down on the display stand is the one crime to this set. I do wish, again, that Skeets, as mentioned in this review, could have been a little higher up. He should be sitting at around the shoulder area of Booster Gold. And, you know, again, could take the practice from the older DC Universe figures. DC Universe Classics Booster Gold, remember, had a little peg joint that attached on the back of his body, and Skeets sat really close to his shoulders. I wish they could have done something similar here with the multiverse release of these guys. Again, the display stand is a nice included touch. If you don't necessarily like the size and just how much space it occupies, then again, you have those little circular black basic display stands. Those get packaged along with the figures as well. And once again, I do like the idea that they included artwork trading cards. Figure photography is fine and good, and I still like the figure photography trading cards, but I like the artwork trading cards so much more. What do you guys think of this set? Really cool looking figures of both Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. Whether you picked up the set for yourself or based on this review, let me know your comments, or let me know your feelings of this set down below in the comment section. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of the brand new Blue Beetle and Booster Gold that we could have a look at in this review. If you enjoyed this review and enjoyed this video, why not hit it with a like? If you're loving the content you guys have seen, and let's just say you're new here, you just stumbled in from outside. The gentleman right here who should have brought himself an umbrella. Come on in, dry yourself off. If you are new here and you are enjoying the content you're seeing and do certainly want to stick around for more, then make sure you hit the crucial subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. While we have wrapped up things right now for Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, there will be more DC Multiverse reviews coming your way. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.